The year is 1776. Most British colonists residing in the city of Perth Amboy have led a prosperous lifestyle for decades. Many of these citizens are the privileged gentry of the New Jersey colony, with some being the proprietors of East Jersey. Property ownership and commerce are the mainstays of the proprietor's wealth. Some citizens enjoy riches, political connections, and family relations dating back to Perth Amboy's establishment in 1683. As a planned colonial capital, Perth Amboy is laid out on a design grid. During the 18th century, street names are different. State Street is named Back Street, with Washington as North Back Street. Fayette is called South Dock Street, and Gordon known as Gully Street. New Brunswick Avenue is simply referred to as the road to New Brunswick, which is the main highway in and out of town. Located on this highly traveled roadway are the Perth Amboy British Barracks. Completed in 1759, these barracks are occupied by the 29th, the 60th, and the 47th English Army Regiments. Prior to the American Revolution, relations with these troops are good. In particular, the 29th Regiment is extremely popular. During 1771, Perth Amboy Mayor James Parker thanks the 29th commanders for the peace, good order, and harmony which exists between the troops and the population of the town. On these grounds, military troops drill. From the front of the barracks to Sandy Point on the Raritan River, the regiments conduct their training. Leisure time is spent gambling, drinking, and at times carving decorations into powder horns, with some of these carvings being quite detailed. And within the barracks, food, black powder, and flintlock guns are stored in close proximity to the regimental quarters. After the 47th Regiment's peaceful garrison at the Amboy Barracks, they are called to New York, and then to Boston, Massachusetts. During 1775, at the Battle of Bunker Hill, many 47th officers, along with their infantry, are cut down by American Patriot sharpshooters. The charge up Bunker Hill, directly towards lines of American riflemen, is a bloody affair, with row after row of British soldiers advancing in formation. Casualties on both sides are high, yet the highly trained British Army wins the day. Throughout most of 1775, the Perth Amboy Barracks remain empty. But towards the end of that year, American Colonel Lord Sterling orders Patriot troops to be stationed there. Shortly thereafter, Colonel Nathaniel Hurd's militia will occupy these barracks. By this time, tensions are running high across the colonies, and American publications continue to urge colonists to support the cause. While many Perth Amboy residents remain loyal to the English king, their juvenile sons do not. These young rebels form their own band, parading up and down the streets of Amboy. On their caps is the patriot motto, liberty or death. Oddly enough, these youngsters march in front of Royal Governor William Franklin, who is the king's advocate. The governor reviews these youths and then invites them to his home. Therein, a special party is prepared, and they are all entertained. Captain Joseph Bloomfield's regiment of Jersey troops arrive in Perth Amboy, crossing the Raritan River from its southern banks. Bloomfield's men complete earthwork entrenchments. At the same time, Colonel Nathaniel Hurd's militia are awaiting orders, still occupying the barracks. During this time, many of the Perth Amboy boys assist the American cause. These youngsters watch the soldiers and report any failure in duty by any of the soldiers to the American officers. Within the royal mansion, Governor William Franklin is offered a parole by the Continental Congress, but refuses it and is placed under guard. A watch of 60 soldiers surrounds the governor's house. A report is made to the Continental Congress.
A letter from the Convention of New Jersey, enclosing sundry papers, together with their proceedings in apprehending William Franklin, Esquire, governor of that colony, was laid before Congress. Whereupon resolved, that it be recommended to the Convention of New Jersey to proceed on the examination of Mr. Franklin, and if, upon such examination, they shall be of opinion that he should be confined, to report such opinion to Congress, and then Congress will direct the place of his confinement. Proceedings of Congress, June 19, 1776.
Colonel Nathaniel Hurd arrests the governor. William is eventually sent to prison in Connecticut. His life will never be the same again. While in confinement, William's wife dies. His possessions burn in a fire, and he remains estranged from his father, Benjamin. William and Benjamin Franklin will never fully reconcile. Towards the end of June 1776, right after the removal of Governor Franklin, British General Sir William Howe arrives at Staten Island with a large body of troops. The general purpose is to divide the colonies, that is, preventing any link or common plan. Perth Amboy is selected by General George Washington as the location to thwart General Howe's efforts. And General Hugh Mercer, along with James Monroe, arrive in Perth Amboy under orders from Washington.
The camp will be in the neighborhood of Amboy. The disaffection of the people of that place is exceedingly great, and unless it be checked and overawed, it may become more general and alarming. The arrival of the enemy will encourage it. They are already on Staten Island, and about 4,000 were marching about it yesterday. It is not unlikely that in a little time they may attempt to cross to the Jersey side and induce many to join them, unless there is a force to oppose them. General George Washington, July 4th, 1776.
1,000 American troops march into Perth Amboy. They search for a lookout post and decide on St. Peter's Church steeple. The current structure dates to 1852, but the original goes back to 1719. Organized in 1698, St. Peter's is the oldest Episcopal parish in New Jersey. Situated on the crest of the Amboy Bluff, the steeple provides an excellent view of the surroundings. A British warship enters the Raritan Bay and anchors in waters off St. Peter's Church, about midway between Staten Island and Perth Amboy. Word is sent out via horsemen, and patriots are alerted. A few miles away in Woodbridge, cannons are secured. By the darkness of night, American forces bring in a cannon and place it behind the breastwork of the church. When morning dawns, they fire upon the British brig of war. Cannon blasts are returned by the English ship. A bombardment ensues. Firing by cannon, rifle, and musket is heavy. Perth Amboy becomes a war zone. Another British ship near the point of Staten Island also fires. Within St. Peter's Cemetery, the tombstone of William Bryant is broken off by a ball, and a stray cannonball leaves its mark on the church's eastern wall. Folklore states that the tombstone of Gertrude Hay is pierced by a projectile from the British ship. Here, a round lead ball, similar to those used in the American Revolution, is sized against Gertrude's marker.
As there is the most pressing necessity for all troops, with exception, to march to Amboy in the state of New Jersey, it is hereby most earnestly requested that they do immediately proceed without waiting for further supplies of arms or any other matter or thing, as care will be taken to furnish them when they arrive in camp. Richard Peters, Secretary, War Office, Philadelphia, 1776.
A cannon is moved closer to the Amboy Bluff, as this is an ideal position for firing out towards the British ship. Near the site of the present-day Raritan Yacht Club, an American artillery unit takes aim at the English warship. The view is clear, and the angle is just right. However, they are now in plain view of the British sharpshooters on board the ship. Regardless of the peril, here they will make their stand against two warships of the Great British Navy. After adjusting the carriage, they load their gun and fire. Cannonballs may appear crude, but in the hands of a skilled artillery crew, they can be accurate and deadly. However, aim from the ships will vary due to the waves and currents experienced. Over Perth Amboy, the bombardment continues. Fearful townfolk watch the engagement from rooftops and afar. British cannon cease fire. American forces are well positioned, whereas the British warships are far too close to the Amboy Bluff. The English captain realizes his ship can be sunk. Safety is now required, and the British set sail in retreat. Additional skirmishes will continue throughout the summer of 1776 across the Arthur Kill Sound. The English Army occupies Staten Island, while American troops are based in Perth Amboy.
I find by intelligence from our guards at South Amboy that some ships, 5 in number, that passed us yesterday from fresh kills, were full of soldiers, who appeared on deck after getting round Billop's Point. As the ships passed, our field pieces played on them, but with little effect. The enemy returned the cannonade briskly during the space of an hour, with 4, 6, and 12-pounders. One of our militia was killed, and 2 wounded. General Hugh Mercer to George Washington, Perth Amboy, July 1776.
General Mercer sets up earthworks in front of the Parker Castle, located on Water Street near Smith Street. John Parker built the stone section during the 1720s, with the upper frame addition constructed by his son James a few years before the American Revolution. Here, Mercer places 4 cannons aimed towards the British encampment on Staten Island, near the Billop House.
The enemy's guards, in our view, continue without any new movement. From their number, it is probable that 2 regiments encamp near this end of Staten Island. We have been able, however, to procure no certain intelligence of their situation. No person has yet come over to use, nor is it easy to find one of our friends duly qualified or ready to undertake the business of a spy on the island. About 400 of the Pennsylvania Rifle Battalion have joined us, and another party of the same regiment is on its way. I have the honor to be, Sir, Your Excellency's most obedient servant, General Hugh Mercer to George Washington, Perth Amboy, July 1776.
Across the Arthur Kill, British grenadiers are visible. Control of this waterway is deemed essential by the English. On Staten Island, the Billop House becomes a British command post.
On Thursday, several cannon were fired from our battery at Amboy at a number of boats from Staten Island bound to Sandy Hook, supposed to join part of the ministerial fleet lying there. This brought on a cannonade from the encampment near Billop's Point on the island. Firing on both sides was very hot for near an hour. The boats got clear, but many of the regulars were seen to fall, and several were carried off, supposed wounded. On our side, a soldier in the Philadelphia line was killed, 1 wounded, a horse in a carriage had his head shot off on High Street, and some damage done to the houses. The Pennsylvania Gazette, July 29, 1776.
From the bluffs on both sides of the Arthur Kill, Americans and British fire upon each other throughout the summer of 1776. A prisoner confined in the second floor of Perth Amboy City Hall, then used as a guardhouse, is killed from a shot entering the upper part of the building. Artillery riddles the town with some deadly results. It is at this time that British Admiral Lord Richard Howe asked the Continental Congress for a peace conference. Lord Howe deems the American cause to be hopeless and their future shrouded in gloom. Congress chooses a committee.
The Congress having appointed Mr. John Adams, Mr. Edward Rutledge, and myself to meet Lord Howe and hear what propositions he may have to make, we propose setting out tomorrow, and are to be at Perth Amboy on Wednesday morning. If an answer comes to your hands, send it to meet us at Amboy. Benjamin Franklin to George Washington, September 8, 1776.
Franklin, Adams, and Rutledge arrive in Perth Amboy on September 11th. At the foot of Smith Street is the public dock. Here they meet Lord Howe's barge under a flag of truce. Lord Howe has provided one of his officers to remain as a hostage, but being a gentleman, Franklin refuses such an offer. All are taken to the Billop House, directly across from Perth Amboy. Lord Howe meets the committee on the Staten Island shoreline and escorts them to a room in the Billop Mansion. Therein, Lord Howe assesses the possibility of effecting a reconciliation between England and its American colonies. For over 3 hours they discuss this. The differences cannot be resolved, and they part ways. General Washington desires to take some action against Staten Island. Perth Amboy would be the launching point for the attack force. However, the unavailability of watercraft needed to carry troops across the Arthur Kill delays Washington's plan until the fall season. By October, General Hugh Mercer is ready. During the night of October 16, 1776, General Mercer passes over to Staten Island with a portion of his Amboy troops. Hoping to capture an army of Hessians, as well as General Cortlandt Skinner's Loyalist militia, Mercer sets out to Richmond Town. Mercer divides his forces. One battalion under Colonel Griffin is sent to fall upon the east end of Richmond Town, while the remainder of the army encloses the town on both sides. The divisions reach their positions by daybreak. Surprise is part of Mercer's plan, but the British have been warned. Volleys of English musket fire greet the American soldiers. Oddly enough, British General Cortlandt Skinner has been a lifelong Perth Amboy citizen. Skinner remains loyal to the king and acts upon his convictions. 517 men are recruited by Skinner. This loyalist militia has its base on Staten Island. Throughout the day, fighting is hot and heavy. General Mercer's troops are undisciplined, and the battle does not go as planned. However, in the end, Mercer's army is successful. Mercer returns to Perth Amboy with prisoners, a standard of the British Light Horse Cavalry, 45 British muskets, along with other arms and needed supplies.
A party passed over last night to Staten Island with a view to attack the enemy at the east end near the watering place. As we advanced towards Richmond Town, information was given that some companies of British and Hessian troops were stationed there. Surprising them was therefore the first object, which was effected this morning at the break of day. We took about 20 prisoners, partly Hessians and English, 8 Hessians and 9 British, one of those wounded, and beside these, 2 mortally wounded left at Richmond Town. We lost 2 men in the action. What we have collected of intelligence from the prisoners is enclosed. Colonel Griffin received a wound in the heel in the action of this morning, and Lieutenant Colonel Smith of the flying camp was slightly wounded in the arm. I shall send the prisoners on to Philadelphia. General Hugh Mercer to George Washington, Perth Amboy, October 16, 1776.
During this time frame, General Washington's army is not doing well. Washington loses the battles of Harlem Heights, Long Island, White Plains, and Fort Washington. After his retreat, New York City partially burns in a great fire. Admiral Lord Howe's brother, General William Howe, enters what remains of Manhattan and makes it his headquarters.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Thomas Paine, The American Crisis, 1776.
Paine is in Perth Amboy throughout the summer of 1776. Paine, along with General Hugh Mercer, are now familiar with this colonial capital. Both Paine and Mercer joined George Washington in the long retreat across New Jersey. During November of 1776, the American army leaves Perth Amboy. With this retreat, New Jersey is left in the undisputed possession of the British. And by December 1st, Amboy is occupied by the English army. It remains a general belief that all Perth Amboy citizens were loyal to the King of England. That is not true. Colonel John Stevens is raised on High Street in Perth Amboy, and Stevens serves under General George Washington during the American Revolution. Even though he is well connected to the British, as his father serves on the Royal Governor's Council, Stevens becomes a patriot. And Stevens' father will also resign from the council in favor of the American cause. Later, Stevens becomes an inventor. His early railroad engine, as well as his ferry boats, bring him wealth and fame. He buys land on what will eventually become Hoboken, and his sons established the Stevens Institute of Technology. To this very day, the Stevens homestead still stands on High Street. By the very beginning of 1777, the British decide to concentrate their forces in New Brunswick and in Perth Amboy. Thousands of grenadiers land in Amboy. British redoubts are built in the western and northern sections of the city. Amboy is overwhelmed with soldiers. Private homes and public buildings are used to house troops, with military tent encampments being everywhere. Here, the area now known as Perth Amboy's Five Corners is encircled by the British infantry. Perth Amboy is situated at the junction of the Arthur Kill and the Raritan River, which makes it a perfect place for the British to supervise water traffic. The Long Ferry Tavern, established in 1684, will be used by royal forces with ferry service now under their control. General William Howe, along with British General Grant, make plans in Perth Amboy at the Proprietary House, then known as the Royal Governor's Palace. Elizabeth Downs, William Franklin's wife, still occupies the upper floors of the building. During this period, people remaining in Perth Amboy, as well as those across New Jersey, become aware of the character of the invading British Army. These troops need supplies and forage the countryside.
I saw the soldiers plundering the houses, the women trembling and weeping. A scene of promiscuous pillage was in full operation. Here a soldier was seen issuing from a house armed with a frying pan and gridiron, and hastening to deposit them with the store over which his helpmate kept watch. William Dunlap, January 1777.
General Hugh Mercer will never return to Perth Amboy. On January 3, 1777, the Battle of Princeton commences. Mercer receives bayonet wounds, lingers in pain for 9 days, and then dies. The American Revolutionary War has terrible consequences for Perth Amboy. Both British and American garrisons leave New Jersey's capital in shambles. It is worn by years of military occupation. Many of the wealthy gentry will exit with the British. Nearly half of the town's population do not return. New Jersey's capital is transferred to Trenton by 1790, and even the county seat is taken away a few years later. However, Perth Amboy will make a comeback in the 19th century. It will reinvent itself. This city becomes a fashionable resort, harvests fine oysters from the bay, uses its natural clay subsoil to make brick and terracotta, and will eventually turn to heavy industrialization. And over the centuries, this small town of Perth Amboy remains resilient.